On the cracked steps of an abandoned diner, a frail 6-year-old girl named Lily Parker sat hunched against the cold. Her long brown hair was tangled and wet, her ragged red sweater barely shielding her from the bite of November wind. In her tiny hands, she held a crumpled paper turkey, faded, edges worn. She traced the lines with trembling fingers, whispering to herself as though the paper could hear. "Please, don't let me be alone on Thanksgiving." Her voice was so soft the wind nearly carried it away, but she said it again, tears glistening in her wide eyes. Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from. Leave your country name in the comments below. And if you love stories about courage, loyalty, and community, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. Inside the diner's broken window, the reflection of holiday lights from a distant street flickered. Families elsewhere preparing for warmth and feasts. But here, Lily sat alone, her breath turning white against the night. Her stomach growled, but it wasn't food she begged for. It was someone to sit with her, to remind her she wasn't forgotten. The crunch of boots on snow startled her. She flinched, clutching the paper turkey to her chest. From the blizzard emerged a figure, a tired soldier in his 40s, wearing a camouflage uniform. His face was drawn with years of battles, not all of them fought overseas. At his side padded a loyal German shepherd canine named Duke, fur dusted with frost, eyes scanning with steady vigilance. The soldier paused when he saw her, his breath caught, visible in the icy air. He had seen abandoned children in war zones before, but never here, not on Thanksgiving Eve, not in the country he swore to protect. Duke whined low, ears tilting forward. The dog stepped closer, nudging the girl gently with his nose. Lily blinked up at them, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. The soldier lowered himself slowly, knees creaking as he crouched in the snow. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice rough but careful, like it hadn't been used kindly in a long time. "What are you doing out here all alone?" Lily hugged the paper tighter. "I'm waiting." "For who?" His eyes narrowed with concern. She swallowed, eyes falling to the ground. "For someone. For anyone. I don't want to be alone on Thanksgiving." The soldier felt his chest tighten. He reached instinctively into his pocket, pulling out a small, dented silver locket. He flicked it open. Inside was a photograph of his wife and son, both gone now, lost to time and mistakes. His thumb brushed over their smiles as guilt gnawed at him. Duke pressed closer to Lily, resting his head on her knee. She placed a trembling hand on his fur, the first trace of warmth reaching her expression. The soldier's voice broke slightly. "You're not alone anymore. Not tonight." They sat there in the storm, a broken soldier, his loyal dog, and a little girl, who only wanted someone to see her. Snow swirled like ghosts around them. For a fragile moment it felt like maybe her wish had been heard, but then through the howl of wind came something else, the crunch of more footsteps, deliberate and heavy, echoing closer through the night. Duke's ears snapped up. A growl rumbled low in his chest. The soldier's hand tightened around his locket. His instincts told him the night was only beginning. Wind worried the broken blinds, making them chatter like teeth. Inside the abandoned diner, Lily Parker sat in a booth whose vinyl had split into smiles of yellow foam. Jacob Flynn slid into the opposite side, snow steaming off his camouflage uniform. Duke, the German shepherd canine, paced once around the table, checking corners, kitchen doors, the shattered pastry case, then settled with his chest to the aisle, facing the entrance like a living barricade. A rusted coffee pot sat on the counter. Jacob found a tin can under the register and chipped the ice from its rim with his pocket knife. He didn't ask if Lily was hungry. The hollows beneath her eyes had already answered. He opened his rucksack and laid out a soldier's kind of feast. 2 protein bars, a dented can of beans, a sachet of instant cocoa that smelled like memory. He pushed the bars toward her. "You first." She reached, then hesitated, looking at her paper turkey. The faded handprint cut out with a wobbly beak, edges polished by small thumbs. She laid it on the table and smoothed it carefully, as if setting a place. Only then did she unwrap a bar and nibble with the deliberate reverence of someone who's taught herself to make bites last. Duke lifted his head, eyes on her hands, not begging, just measuring. Lily noticed, and after a beat of brave calculation, broke off a corner and offered it. Duke took it with the gentlest of lips, then thumped his tail once, as if accepting not food but covenant. Jacob watched the exchange with an ache he'd learned to swallow. The silver locket warmed under his palm. He opened it, just enough to glance. His wife in a sun hat, his boy with a paper pilgrim he'd made in kindergarten. He had missed that Thanksgiving, missed too many. "You ever do the thing?" he asked softly, "where you name one blessing before you eat?" Lily traced the turkey's thumb feather with her nail. "Mama made us say 3. Her voice teetered, then steadied. "A roof, warm hands, someone who listens." "And tonight?" Jacob prompted. She looked up at him with those storm-bright eyes. "Someone who found me." He had to look away, into the kitchen's dark mouth, because the words hung a little too close to the place where guilt kept house. He busied himself with the beans, punching 2 holes in the lid and setting the can in a wire basket over a sterno flame he'd scrounged from his pack. Blue fire licked. The diner breathed a little warmer. Snow hissed along the threshold. Outside, Maina. Street lay erased under drifts, storefronts blind-eyed. A paper turkey taped to a drugstore window flapped itself ragged in the wind. The season's cheer felt like it belonged to a different planet. "Where's your people, Lily?" Jacob asked, not quite meeting her face. She worked at the wrapper with careful fingers. "Mama, got tired?" The word carried too much meaning for 6 years old. She said the tired in her bones was the kind doctors can't scoop out. "We stayed with Aunt Sal for a while. Then Aunt Sal had the new baby, and there wasn't enough room for me and the crying both." Lily swallowed, wiped her nose on her sleeve, then matter of fact. "A lady at the shelter said they were full, but maybe on Friday. That's after Thanksgiving." Jacob stared at the flame. After. He thought of years he'd promised, after deployment, after training, after the next thing, until after, arrived empty-handed. "Your mum," he said, "she make that turkey with you?" Lily nodded. She traced my hand and said, "Look, that's 5 feathers. That's 5 reasons to be thankful, even if the oven breaks and the gravy is a mess. We ate noodles with butter that year, and she called them pilgrim strings." The edge of a smile, small and brave. "She said thanks is bigger than the food." Duke slid his head under her wrist, encouraging the rest of the bar into her mouth. She obeyed, giggling once at the nudge, the sound so sudden and light that Jacob felt something in his ribcage unclench. He passed her the steaming can and used a spoon to stir. "Careful, it bites." They shared from the rim, 2 slow spoons for her, 1 for him. He tore the second bar in half and pocketed the rest. The cocoa they split into the same dented can, and when she tipped it, her eyes closed at the heat, like the prayer had finally arrived. "Was your Thanksgiving with your family?" she asked, licking a chocolate moustache. Jacob's jaw worked. The truth had edges. "I used to be gone a lot," he said. "Even when I was home, sometimes my head wasn't. I had reasons, but reasons don't fill chairs." He shut the locket and pinched the hinge to ground himself. "I told my boy I'd carve the turkey next time. Next time didn't come." Silence pooled. Duke angled his body, touching Jacob's boot with a paw, eyes flicking up, a signal, "I'm here." Lily straightened the paper turkey again. "Mama says," she corrected herself softly, then amended. "Mama said, God can make families out of leftovers, like when there's a little bit of everything and you stir it in a pot and it turns into soup." She looked around at the broken diner, at the dog, at the soldier. "This is a funny soup." Jacob huffed a laugh he hadn't made in years. Best I've had in a long time. Wind rose, rattling a hanging exit sign until it clacked like a metronome. Duke's ears pricked. He stood, weight forward, nose tasting. The draft. Jacob recognized the posture, interest sharpening toward alert. "Company?" he murmured. Duke glanced back, a quiet look that was as clear as human speech. "Yes, not sure what." Jacob killed the flame and capped the can with a chipped saucer. He swept the wrappers into his pack and nudged Lily's side of the table deeper into shadow. "Down on the bench," he whispered. "Duke's going to sit in front of you. If I say hide, you get under and you don't argue." She obeyed without question, paper turkey pressed flat beside her like a passport. Footsteps scuffed outside, more than one pair, not jogging, not fleeing, deliberate. A flashlight's cone slid across the diner's cracked signage, then stuttered over the snow-laden door. "Code enforcement!" a voice called, tinny in the wind. "Anyone inside?" Lily's fingers clamped on the bench edge. Jacob put 2 fingers behind him, and Duke flowed sideways to cover more of the aisle. The door scraped open against a drift, a bell somewhere gave up a tired tinkle, and 2 men shouldered in, stamping their boots, orange city vests under parkas, radios at their chests, not looters, worse in some ways, authority. The taller one's beam found Jacob's uniform, then slid, hot and unkind, until it landed on the small shape in the booth. "Sir," the man said, voice tight with procedure, "you can't shelter here. This building's condemned." Jacob didn't move. "Blizzard says otherwise." "This is trespassing." The second man angled his light, catching Lily's face, the red sweater, the 2 thin wrists. His tone softened a fraction, then hardened with the memory of a rulebook. "And the child, she can't be with you. We'll need to contact Child Protective, get her to intake." Lily made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Duke shifted, a low vibration building in his chest that had stopped stronger men than these from taking another step. Jacob kept a hand near the dog's shoulder without touching, 1 inch of space, the difference between threat and promise. "It's Thanksgiving," Jacob said, voice even. The tall one's mouth was a line. "And we're 3 hours into a state advisory. There's a warming center at the high school. We take the minor now." Lily slid her paper turkey closer to her belly as if it could shield her. "Please," she whispered so softly, Jacob barely heard it. "Don't let me be alone." He felt the words cut through him like clean steel. He'd failed too many dinners, too many chairs. Not again. He rose, slow, hands where they could see them. "You'll get her warm and feed her? Stay with her till morning?" he asked. "Of course," the second said, but doubt flickered. The storm was getting worse. The radio on his vest spit static and half words. "Road closures. Shelter capacity. Standby." Jacob's eyes went to the glass doors, the white world he'd watched swallow good intentions. He looked at Lily. She wasn't crying. That hurt more. She was bracing. He tapped the locket with his thumb once. Decide. Duke's head turned, seeking Jacob's eyes. In that brief look their old syntax fired. Hold, guard, with me. Jacob angled his body a fraction to put more of himself between the booth and the men. "How about we all walk together?" he offered, voice cordial but edged. "You in front, me behind, dog leashed. We get her there, or we turn back together. No one gets separated." "Sir, that's not—" A crash from the back kitchen cut the sentence in half. A falling sheet pan, or a rat panicked by the cold, or the building itself shrugging under snow. Everyone flinched. Duke spun, then reoriented to the door. The taller official swore under his breath and keyed his radio, more static. "Dispatch? Copy?" Nothing. The shorter man looked at Lily again, then at Jacob. Compassion warred with liability. He opened his mouth, and the wind shoved the door wider, exploding a stinging cloud of flurries into the diner. Through it, past the official's shoulders, Jacob caught movement in the alley. 3 shapes, hoods up, the wrong kind of stillness, not city vests, not helpers. Duke planted, weight forward, a growl like a warning bell rolling out of his chest. Jacob's voice went quiet. "We're not alone." The tall official turned, lifting his light. The beam found a face for a blink, scar across the cheek, smile like a knife, and then the storm erased it again. "Who's there?" the official called, trying for command, landing on fear. The alley gave back only wind. Lily's hand sought the paper turkey, flattening it, as if promises could be ironed into the moment. Jacob flicked 2 fingers. Duke flowed to the threshold, not crossing, not retreating. The soldier's other hand closed around the locket until the metal dug a crescent into his palm. Outside, the footsteps resumed, softer now, like wolves learning how to step where the snow won't talk. The radio crackled one clear word at last: caution. The storm pressed harder against the glass, snow hissing through cracks in the window panes. Inside the diner, the dim blue glow from the sterno flame had already died, leaving only the jitter of flashlights in the official's hands. Lily Parker huddled against the booth, her red sweater damp at the sleeves, her paper turkey folded tight against her chest. She tried to breathe quietly, though the sound kept snagging in her throat. Duke, the German Shepherd K9, crouched low at the door, shoulders taut, growls simmering like a fuse about to catch. Jacob Flynn, the soldier in his 40s, kept one hand near Duke's collar and the other on his side pocket where the silver locket lay hidden. He stared through the swirling snow, eyes narrowing. He knew the gait of men who moved like that, slow, deliberate, predatory. The taller official swallowed audibly, adjusting his vest. Could be more folk seeking shelter? His voice lacked conviction. Jacob shook his head. No, those weren't lost steps. That was purpose. The shorter official's flashlight beam cut across the diner windows. For a heartbeat, a face appeared, gaunt, hollow-eyed, lips cracked and bleeding. A man in rags leaned into the light, clutching a rusted iron bar in trembling hands. Lily gasped, hugging the turkey tighter. The starving man's voice cracked like splintered wood. "Food! Please, give me food!" Duke erupted into a bark that rattled the glass. Jacob tightened his grip. "Easy, boy." The starving man slammed the iron bar against the doorframe, eyes wild. "Don't hide it from me! I saw the can! I'll take it if I have to!" The taller official took a half-step back, muttering, "He's delirious." But Lily slid from the booth before anyone could stop her. She walked slowly, clutching the small tin Jacob had tucked away. Her eyes brimmed with tears, but her voice was steady. "It was for my mama," she whispered, holding out the tin. "But maybe she can share." The starving man froze. Snow clung to his lashes, his chest heaving. He reached with shaking hands, taking the tin as though it were gold. He opened it and devoured the scraps, crumbs falling into the snow at his boots. When the last bite was gone, he sank to his knees, sobbing into the storm. The official stared, unsure what to do. Jacob's throat tightened, torn between the instinct to protect and the sight of a child giving her only possession. Lily turned back, whispering toward the paper turkey in her arms. "Mama, it's okay. I didn't eat alone." Jacob closed his eyes. The soldier in him wanted to say this was foolish, reckless. But the man who had missed too many Thanksgivings felt something break inside. He had forgotten what mercy looked like until a 6-year-old reminded him. Duke pressed his head against Lily's side as if sealing her act with approval. But the moment cracked under the sound of more footsteps crunching outside, heavier, closer, not one starving man now, many. The starving man scrambled away into the alley, clutching the empty tin. The taller official flicked his radio, whispering, "Dispatch, we need backup, possible group approaching." Static answered. Jacob straightened, jaw clenched, every nerve awake. He slipped the locket into his fist and whispered more to himself than anyone else. "Not tonight. Not again." Duke's growl deepened, eyes fixed on the doorway. And in the storm, shadows multiplied. The diner shuddered under the storm's weight, its roof groaning like an old ship in a gale. Snow pushed through every crack, dusting the floor in pale drifts. The flashlights in the officials' hands cast jerking shadows across the peeling walls. Lily Parker curled up on the booth's edge, clutching her paper turkey. The red sweater she wore was soaked through, sticking to her tiny arms. Her lips moved soundlessly as if she were whispering a prayer only heaven could hear. Jacob Flynn stood near the door, shoulders squared, the silver locket biting into his palm. Duke, the German shepherd, pressed forward on stiff legs, a growl rumbling low, eyes fixed on the snowy blur outside. The taller official's radio sputtered static again before dying completely. "No signal," he muttered, voice tense. "We can't call anyone." The shorter official licked his lips, glancing from Lily to Jacob. "We can't stay here much longer. This place—" As if on cue, a deafening crack split the ceiling. A beam sagged under the weight of snow, then snapped. Wood crashed to the floor, sending shards skittering across the diner tiles. Lily screamed, covering her head with her hands. Duke lunged instantly, shielding her body with his own. Jacob's instincts snapped alive. "Move!" he barked. He grabbed Lily, lifting her small frame into his arms. "Storage room's no good. Roof's next. We need sturdier walls." The officials didn't argue. They shoved the door open against the drift, the storm slapping them with knives of ice. The wind howled so loud it felt like the earth itself was crying out. Through the whiteout, Jacob spotted it, the broken steeple of an old church, 2 blocks down. Its stone walls still stood, scarred but strong. He nodded toward it. "There!" They plunged into the blizzard, Duke bounding ahead, snow clinging to his fur. Lily buried her face against Jacob's chest, clutching her paper turkey between them, whispering into the storm, "Please, Mama, don't let me be alone." The streets were ghostly, abandoned cars half buried, storefront signs whipping in the wind. A Thanksgiving banner ripped free and tangled around a lamppost, its cheery colors mocking in the storm's fury. They reached the church steps, just as another groan came from above, the diner's roof collapsing in the distance with a sound like thunder. Jacob pushed the heavy oak doors open, ushering Lily, Duke, and the officials inside. The air inside was cold but still, the storm muted to a dull roar. Stained glass windows rattled but held. Broken pews lined the nave, candles long since burned out. At the altar, a wooden cross leaned, scarred by years and weather. Jacob lowered Lily gently onto a pew. She laid her paper turkey on the altar rail, smoothing it with careful hands. "It's for Mama," she whispered, eyes shimmering. "So she knows I didn't forget Thanksgiving." Jacob's breath caught. The locket weighed heavy around his neck. He thought of the empty chairs at his table, the son who once begged him to carve the turkey, the wife who saved him a plate that went cold every year. He knelt beside Lily, voice rough. "You didn't forget, and she didn't forget you." Duke rested his head on Lily's knee, steady as stone. The girl stroked his ears, a faint smile tugging her lips despite the storm, but the fragile peace shattered when the heavy doors rattled behind them, not from the wind this time, but from fists, loud, deliberate. The officials froze, exchanging looks. Duke sprang up, hackles raised, growl reverberating through the sanctuary. Jacob stood, pulling Lily behind him, his jaw set like steel. The fists came again, harder, then a voice, hoarse, mocking, slipped through the cracks. "Nice place you've got. Warm walls, food maybe. Hand it over, soldier. Hand over the girl, or we take it." Lily whimpered. Her paper turkey slid from the altar and fluttered to the floor. Jacob's breath hitched. The locket dug into his chest. His eyes hardened. Duke braced, waiting for the signal, and Jacob whispered to himself, almost a vow, "Not tonight, not again." The pounding on the church doors grew sharper, each strike shaking the warped wood in its frame. Snow sifted from the rafters, and the broken cross at the altar creaked like it remembered every prayer ever cried beneath it. Lily Parker huddled behind a pew, her small frame hidden in the shadows, clutching her paper turkey tight against her chest. Her eyes glistened, wide and fearful. Jacob Flynn planted himself in the center aisle, boots echoing on the stone floor, one hand brushing the locket beneath his uniform. His breath fogged in front of him, steady and controlled. Years of combat had taught him what came next, but this was different. Tonight, there was a child to protect. Duke, the German shepherd, stood rigid at his side. His ears were forward, muscles coiled, growl low and lethal. Every fiber of him was a living warning. One step closer and I'll strike. A voice outside called again, muffled by the door, but thick with menace. Don't make us break it down. We know you're in there. We want the food, the dog, the girl. Hand them over, soldier. The officials, who had followed Jacob and Lily into the church, looked pale, their flashlights shaking in their grip. The taller one leaned toward Jacob, whispering urgently, "We can't fight them. We'll be outnumbered." Jacob didn't take his eyes off the door. "Then don't fight. Stay back with the girl. Duke and I will handle the rest." Before either official could answer, the door slammed open. The wood splintered, snow blasting into the sanctuary. 3 figures stumbled in, their faces half hidden by scarves and shadows. The first was tall, scar carved across his cheek, gripping a bat wrapped in wire. The second carried a rusted knife, eyes wild with hunger. The third, bare-handed but broad-shouldered, cracked his knuckles as he stepped inside. The scarred man sneered when he spotted Jacob. "Soldier boy, should have kept moving. Now you're stuck with us." His gaze flicked to the pew where Lily crouched. A grin slashed across his face. "And look, a prize!" Lily gasped and clutched her turkey tighter. Duke snarled, stepping forward, hackles bristling. The sound reverberated through the stone nave, a growl so deep the looters hesitated. Jacob's voice cut through the tension, cold and commanding. "No one touches her. You want to fight? Come through me." The scarred man laughed harshly. "Gladly." He swung the bat in a wide arc, sparks flying as it scraped stone. The knife wielder darted forward. "Duke, hold!" Jacob barked. The dog launched like a bullet, colliding with the knife wielder mid-stride. They crashed onto the floor. Duke's jaws clamped on the man's arm, teeth sinking deep. The knife skittered across the stone, out of reach. Jacob met the scarred man head-on. The bat whistled through the air. Jacob caught it with his forearm, pain lancing up his arm, but he twisted, wrenching the weapon free. With his other hand, he slammed the man back against a pew so hard it cracked. The third looter charged, fists raised. Jacob pivoted, driving his shoulder into the man's chest. The impact sent them both crashing into the altar rail, the wooden cross rattling above. Through it all, Lily's voice was a tiny thread, but steady. She pressed her paper turkey to her lips and whispered, "Please, God, don't let me be alone tonight." Her words floated into the storm of violence, soft but sharp, like a bell only the desperate could hear. Jacob's strength surged at the sound. His muscles screamed, his breath burned, but he shoved the broad man off him, landing a strike that dropped him to the floor. Duke tore free the knife wielder's sleeve, forcing the man to crawl backward, blood staining the snow that had blown inside. The scarred leader staggered to his knees, face twisted with rage. He lunged for Jacob again, but Duke intercepted, slamming into him, forcing him down. "Enough!" Jacob's roar filled the church. The looters froze, panting, broken by force and fear. The scarred man spat blood, eyes darting toward the storm outside. Without another word, they stumbled back through the door, retreating into the blizzard. Silence crashed down, broken only by the echo of Lily's whisper. Jacob leaned against a pew, chest heaving, pain burning in his arm. He looked at Lily. She hadn't stopped praying, even when danger towered over her. Slowly, Jacob crossed the aisle and knelt beside her. His voice was raw, trembling. "You're safe. I swear it. As long as I breathe, you will not be alone." Duke padded over, pressing his head into Lily's lap. She stroked his ears, tears streaking her cheeks, but a faint smile breaking through. The storm outside still raged, but inside, for the first time, warmth bloomed, not from fire or food, but from the vow just spoken. The church lay in silence after the intruders fled, only the sound of the storm breathing against the stained glass. Shards of snow glittered on the floor where the door had been forced open, and broken pews stood like crooked teeth in the dark. Jacob Flynn leaned against the wall, his arm throbbing where the bat had struck. His chest rose and fell with the rhythm of battle spent. Duke, the German shepherd, paced the aisle once, then returned to Lily Parker, pressing his muzzle into her lap as if to check she was truly whole. Lily stroked his ears, her small fingers shaking. She had not let go of her paper turkey even during the fight. Now she placed it carefully on the altar rail again, smoothing the creases. Jacob lowered himself onto the nearest pew with a grunt. His breath fogged, and he rubbed his face with a hand, crusted in snow and blood. "We'll rest here. Storm's not letting up any time soon." The taller official shifted uncomfortably near the door. "We should have escorted her to intake. None of this—" He cut himself off at Jacob's glare, then added softly, "But I suppose the shelters are already full." Jacob didn't answer. His gaze was on Lily. Her red sweater was torn at the cuff, her cheeks hollow, but her eyes still carried something he hadn't seen in a long time: determination. She dug into her little cloth satchel and pulled out the last of what she had: a crust of bread, a shriveled apple slice, and 2 hard candy pieces wrapped in fading cellophane. She laid them out on a wooden pew like a banquet. Jacob frowned. "That's not enough for you. Keep it." Lily shook her head, sliding the bread toward him. "Mama said Thanksgiving isn't about the food, it's about saying thanks together." Jacob felt something tighten in his throat. He reached into his rucksack, pulling out the remains of his own rations: half a protein bar, the rest of the beans sealed back into the tin, and a pouch of powdered soup. He added them to her small offering. Together, it looked pitiful: scraps, fragments, mismatched and meager. Yet Lily's face brightened as though she were staring at a feast. She folded her hands, bowing her head. "Thank you for the roof, for Duke, for the soldier, and for not leaving me alone tonight." The words landed heavy in Jacob's chest. He lowered his head too, though he hadn't prayed in years. His thumb brushed the silver locket through his uniform, feeling the familiar ridge of the photograph inside. When they began to eat, Lily passed the apple slice first to Duke. The dog took it gently, his dark eyes shining in the flicker of the candle Jacob had lit from his kit. Then she offered Jacob the bread before taking a piece for herself. The soup boiled weakly in the dented tin, thin and watery. Yet when she lifted the spoon to her lips, she smiled. "It tastes like home." Jacob swallowed hard. He remembered his boy once saying the same thing, after his wife had burned the stuffing, and they'd laughed around the table anyway. He'd missed too many of those moments, chasing duty, chasing distance. He forced the thought back, but Lily's voice cut through his silence. "Did you ever eat Thanksgiving with your family?" The soldier stared at the floor, the cracked tiles lit by the candle. "Once, a long time ago. I missed more than I came. My wife, she used to wait up with a plate for me. My son, he stopped setting one after a while." His voice broke on the memory. "I thought I had time to make it right. Then time was gone." The pew creaked as Lily crawled over and sat beside him, her doll tucked under one arm, the paper turkey under the other. She looked up at him with eyes that saw too much and said, "Maybe tonight you can make it right, with me." The words hit harder than any bat. Jacob turned his face away, blinking back tears. He couldn't speak. Duke shifted closer, laying his head across Jacob's knee, grounding him in the present. Jacob drew a shaking breath, finally managing to whisper, "Then tonight, I'm thankful for you." Lily smiled and leaned against his side, her tiny frame fitting against his battered body as if she belonged there. The storm still raged outside, but inside the broken church, scraps became supper, strangers became family, and despair became thanksgiving. Yet even as warmth kindled, Duke lifted his head suddenly, ears pricked, eyes narrowing toward the door. His body stiffened, growl rising again. Jacob's heart sank. Danger hadn't left them, It was circling back. The storm pressed against the stained glass windows like a living thing, rattling the panes with icy fists. Inside the broken church, shadows stretched long across the pews, cast by the single stub of candle Jacob Flynn had lit. Lily Parker leaned against his side, her doll tucked under one arm, the crumpled paper turkey still safe in her small hands. She was warm at last, though only by degrees, wrapped in Jacob's outer jacket. Duke, the German shepherd, lay across the aisle, head up, ears keen, eyes fixed on the entrance, as if he could see through stone. Jacob stared at the candle, its tiny flame fighting against the draught. The soup's thin broth still lingered on his tongue, but what weighed heavier was the silence, the kind of silence that demanded truth. He took out the silver locket again, turning it over in his fingers. The hinge squeaked when he opened it. Inside, the photo looked dim in the candlelight. His wife in her sun hat, smiling, his little boy with the kind of grin that made you believe in tomorrow. He spoke without looking at Lily. His voice was gravel. I used to think duty was everything, the uniform, the missions, the orders. I missed birthdays, I missed dinners, I missed Thanksgivings. I kept telling them, next year I'll be there, next year I'll make it right. He swallowed, jaw tight. But the next year never came. And then one day, it was too late. Lily was quiet, her eyes reflecting the candle's flicker. Then she whispered, "They went to heaven?" Jacob nodded once, slow. "Car accident. I wasn't there. I never got to say goodbye." The words tore out of him like shrapnel he'd carried too long. His hand shook. Around the locket. He had told himself he couldn't cry anymore, but the tears came anyway, silent at first, then heavier. Duke stood, padded over, and rested his head firmly against Jacob's knee. The pressure was steady, grounding. Jacob dropped a hand into the thick fur, clutching it like a lifeline. Lily set her paper turkey on the pew and crawled up onto his lap. She was so light it barely shifted his weight. She placed her tiny hand over the locket. Then maybe God sent you here. To me. So you wouldn't be alone tonight. And I wouldn't either. The soldier's breath caught. He tried to answer, but all he could do was pull her close, wrapping his arm around her fragile frame. For the first time in years, he felt the promise of family stirring again, fragile but real. "You don't owe me anything," he managed, voice breaking. Lily shook her head. "Families don't owe, they just stay." He closed his eyes, pressing his forehead against hers. "Then I'll stay. As long as I live, Lily, you'll never be alone again." Duke let out a soft whine, as if sealing the vow. But before the warmth of that moment could settle, the church door rattled again. This time, not just fists, but the sound of boots grinding against stone. Voices, low and harsh, filtered through the cracks. "Check inside, they're holed up here." Jacob stiffened, his arm instinctively pulled Lily closer. Duke stepped forward, body lowering, a growl vibrating deep in his chest. The taller official, pale from earlier, whispered, "They're back." Jacob rose, setting Lily gently behind the pew, his body between her and the door. He clenched the locket in one fist, his other hand gripping the splintered bat he'd taken from the looters. His voice was steel now, stripped of everything but resolve. "They want to fight," he muttered. "They'll get me first." The candle flame flickered wildly in the draught, throwing the cross's shadow long across the nave, and Lily, clutching her doll, whispered again, this time not to the paper turkey, but to the air itself. "Please, God, don't let me be alone." The doors began to splinter. The old oak doors of the church buckled under the weight of fists and boots. Snow burst inward with each blow, scattering across the stone floor like broken glass. The storm outside howled, but it was the voices that froze the air inside. "Open it up, soldier," one man snarled. "We'll take what's ours. The food, the girl, the mutt. Hand them over, and maybe you walk out breathing." Jacob Flynn stood in the center aisle, shoulders squared, the splintered bat clenched in his hands. His chest rose and fell with iron steadiness, though his heart pounded like a war drum. His thumb brushed over the silver locket in his pocket. Tonight would not end in failure, not like before. Behind him, Lily Parker crouched low behind a pew, clutching her paper turkey and doll, lips moving in prayer. Her voice was too soft for the intruders to hear, but Jacob caught the whisper. "Please, God, don't let me be alone." Duke, the German shepherd, planted himself at Jacob's side. His fur bristled, teeth bared, a deep growl rolling from his chest. His eyes locked on the door, waiting for the moment. The final kick split the doors wide. Snow and shadows spilled into the sanctuary as 3 looters stormed in, weapons raised, their faces twisted with hunger and malice, eyes glittering like wolves. Jacob didn't hesitate. "Duke, go!" The dog launched forward, a blur of muscle and fury. He collided with the first looter, dragging him down hard, jaws locking on the man's arm. The weapon clattered across the floor. The second charged Jacob with a knife. Jacob swung the bat, wood meeting steel, the impact echoing through the church. Pain flared in his arm, but he forced the knife free and shoved the man into the pews, the wood splintering beneath the weight. The scarred leader, the same one from before, strode down the aisle with a rusted crowbar, sneer etched deep into his face. "You can't save her, soldier, not forever." Jacob's grip tightened. His voice came rough, but unwavering. "I only have to save her tonight, and tonight you're not taking her." The scarred man swung. Jacob blocked, the force rattling his bones. They struggled in the aisle, snow swirling around them through the broken door. The crowbar nicked Jacob's arm, drawing blood, but he held firm. Then, through the chaos, Lily's voice cut the air. "Jacob!" He turned just enough to see her standing, doll clutched in one hand, paper turkey in the other. Her eyes glistened, but her voice rang out clear and strong. "You're my family now." The words lit something inside him, stronger than pain, stronger than fear. With a roar, Jacob twisted the bat free and drove the scarred man backward, slamming him against the stone wall. The crowbar fell. Duke, released from the first attacker, lunged and pinned the leader to the ground, teeth bared inches from his throat. The remaining looters staggered to their feet, staring at the soldier, the child, and the dog. They saw something more than resistance. They saw resolve, unbreakable and absolute. Muttering curses, they scrambled back into the storm, dragging their wounded leader with them. Silence returned, broken only by the ragged breaths of the 3 who remained. Jacob dropped the bat, his hands trembling. He staggered back toward the pew where Lily stood. She rushed into his arms, pressing her face against his chest. He held her tightly, his tears falling into her tangled hair. "You'll never be alone again," he whispered. "Not on Thanksgiving, not ever." Duke pressed against them both, his body warm, his eyes soft now that the danger was gone. Outside, the storm began to break. The first light of dawn crept through the shattered windows, casting the sanctuary in pale gold. Snow still fell, but gentler now, almost peaceful. Lily walked to the altar, setting her paper turkey upright one last time. She closed her eyes, whispering toward heaven. "Mama, I wasn't alone. I had family with me." Jacob knelt beside her, the locket open in his palm. For the first time in years he felt its weight lift, not as a chain of regret, but as a reminder of what he had left to give. The 3 of them, soldier, child, and dog, sat together in the morning light, bound not by blood, but by promise. And on that Thanksgiving dawn, salvation wore the face of family, carved out of scraps, faith, and second chances.